Good evening and welcome to this next episode in our study of Dave Andrews' little book called Plan B, which deals with the Beatitudes in the Bible, which is basically an introduction to the Sermon on the Mount, which is a really essential and very important part of the entire message of the Bible, actually. We are now up to we're almost halfway through the Beatitudes here, and today we're going to be starting to talk about Matthew 5 verse 8, and that's the one that says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." If we were to go back to the beginning of the book on page 7, where we are kind of see what are the virtues and who are the people who are blessed in this section of the Bible. And we'll see that the pure in heart are those who are wholehearted in their desire to do right. Remember, some time ago we went through the Beatitude called the "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, because since they will be filled." And that was in verse 6. And when we were there, we saw that there were 5 things that Jesus wanted us to do to be righteous. Another word for righteous is justice. Righteousness is justice. So the first thing that he talked about that he wanted to do was to confronting injustice everywhere in society. And the second thing was the exploitation of the rich. So deliver the poor from exploitation by the rich, and liberating the powerless from the oppression by the powerful. And then we wanted us to end the cycle of violence and counter-violence that tend to escalate instead of de-escalate. And then finally he wanted us to create just communities. So these Beatitudes are kind of connected, some sense. So this one is talking about pure in heart. And like we just saw, the people who are wholeheartedly seeking justice. And though they're not just the ones who appear to be seeking justice, they are actually seeking justice. And we call that integrity. That's what it says on page 7 in the book. So let's get into the text itself and see. I think I have to find a better way to do this because the screen keeps falling asleep when I'm not touching it. But we'll see. Anyway, so we're on page 44, and it begins with, "Blessed are the poor in heart, for they shall see God." And Dave Andrews writes, Jesus encouraged people to be righteous, and that was what we found in Matthew 5:6. So, and seeking justice was the theme of that one. In fact, he consistently challenged ordinary people to be more righteous than the Pharisees. The most righteous people of his time. That's what it says in Matthew 5, verse 20, if you want to look that up. He said that the problem with the Pharisees was that they cleaned the outside of the cup, but inside they are full of wickedness. That's what it says in Luke 11, verse 39. He wanted people to be pure or clean in heart, and that's the verse we're talking about today, Matthew 5, verse 8. So let's look a little bit about what does it mean to be pure in heart. So in other words, we've seen that the Pharisees kind of pretended that they were pure, but the inside was all rotten. This is what she's trying to illustrate here. The word Jesus used for pure or clean in heart is recorded as kataros, a word that was used to describe winnowed wheat and unadulterated wine. So that's kataros is a Greek word. You remember that the New Testament is written largely in Greek. And Greek is a pretty precise language. It has, the words have precise meanings, and it pays to pay attention to that. So in other words, the word kataros has to do with things that are pure, things that are unadulterated, unmixed, not contaminated with anything. So Jesus said that it was essential for anyone who really wanted to be righteous to be clean, to clean the inside of the cup thoroughly. Matthew 22 verse 26. Be perfect, he said, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Matthew 5 verse 48. So we're going to get into this concept of perfection, mostly next time, but a little bit here as well. You could think that the goal is to be God, to be as perfect as God. So you want to be God, and that's impossible. So yeah. So Jesus in trying to tell us what that means, really, and we'll hear more about that next time because we're not going to get into it today. So, but here's the beginning of the story. Faced with Jesus' expectations, the obvious question followers of Jesus are forced to answer is this: how in the world does Jesus expect us to be able to clean up our act to such an extent that we can be perfect? And we'll see that that's not exactly what he's trying to say. And a lot of people have been falling into that trap. They're trying to be perfect, and we know it's impossible. Okay. The evangelist continues. I think that part of the answer to the question is in being clear about what Jesus meant by being perfect. And this is not the first time we have seen that when Jesus says something, he means something different from what your first instinct is. So for Jesus, perfect means something different than you would ordinarily mean, that you would ordinarily think to be perfect. Something is without flaw. The adjective used here is teleios, another Greek word, which is derived from the noun telos, which means purpose. Thus, what Jesus is expecting in terms of perfection is that we realize our potential. And we're going to get into looking at what that potential really is. We are created in the image of God to reflect the love of God in our lives as realistically as we can. So as far as Jesus is concerned, for us to be perfect, we need to let the light of the love of God so shine in our lives that people will see our good deeds and glorify our Father in heaven. That's what it says in Matthew 5, verse 16. So Jesus' idea of perfection is quite different from what we would normally consider to be perfection. He says that to be perfect, we need to let the light of the love of God so shine in our lives that people will see our good deeds and glorify our Father in heaven. So we don't do the good deeds to be glorified ourselves, but so that when people see us, they will see the Father. Jesus' expectations of us have nothing to do with abstract faultlessness. So this word just said that perfection is not without blemish. And everything to do with a concrete faithfulness. What is not so clear is how we can practice concrete faithfulness. So perfection is not without fault. Something is not without fault. But it's faithfulness. We believe in God. And here's what, so we're going to get into explaining what that concrete faithfulness means. Most Christian scholars suggest that at least a part of Jesus' answer to this question is discipleship. Following carefully in the footsteps of the Master and incorporating his virtues into our character. For it is in imitating Jesus that all of us can learn how to embody the virtues he incarnated. So, in other words, we can't be Jesus. He's perfect. We cannot be like him. But we can imitate him. We can try to be like him. We can't be him, but we can try to be like him, so that his light will shine through us and people will see God through us. In the Sermon on the Mount, the traits Jesus advocated we incorporate into our character include humility, empathy, self-control, righteousness, mercy, integrity, non-violence, and perseverance. And I think we're just going to stop there tonight. And next time it's going to be a little longer because first we're going to look at an example of what Jesus is not talking about. He's not talking about trying to get into a perfect, some kind of ideal situation, but he wants us to reflect God in everything we do. And we're going to get into that a little bit more next time. So I appreciate you all coming, and we'll be seeing you again next week.